Some wounds don't bleed, they harden into steel inside your chest. My name's Ethan Walker, 41. I make old houses stand straight again. The night everything bent out of shape was a Tuesday. I came home early with orange chicken and cream cheese wontons. The front door sighed. Then I heard it, her laugh, light for the first time since remission, and another laugh braided through it. Brandon's. I walked soft. The kitchen door was half open. Through the gap, Vanessa pinned to our stainless fridge, fingers knotted in Brandon's shirt. Above their heads, the chemo calendar I kept, Sharpie marks for every session, held up by our wedding magnet. I set the takeout on the counter like evidence, not dinner. Nobody jumped. That was the worst part. They're calm. "It's not what you think," Brandon said. It was exactly what I thought. Something in me clicked tight, like a hinge finally set right. "I'm Ethan," I told myself. "Tonight, I choose me." For the record, I'm Ethan Walker, 41, and I make tired houses stand up straight again. If you've ever sanded a century of paint off a porch rail, you know patience isn't soft, it's muscle. My days start at 6:15, steel-toed boots, coffee in a dented thermos, a toolbox that knows my hand better than most people do. Clients care about two things: showing up on time and leaving the place cleaner than you found it. And that suited me. After the scare last year, I built my schedule around Vanessa's appointments: morning pours, afternoon installs, evenings with her on the couch. We used to joke that I married lumber because wood never talks back. But the truth is, wood also never lies. When you square a frame, it tells you if you're off. People, they fudge. That Tuesday felt normal. Supply run, door hang, punch list. I remember thinking, if I can keep the house straight, maybe the rest stays straight too. I didn't know the hinge had already slipped. If you've done hospital time, you learn the choreography no one posts about. Plastic bracelets, beeping monitors, the shuffle to a chair that turns into a bed only if you beg. I learned the pharmacy's closing hours by heart and how to sleep upright with a jacket for a pillow. I held Vanessa's hand through chemo drips and counted her breaths when the nausea crested. People would say, "You're so strong," as if strength was a choice. It wasn't. It was a schedule. Meds at 6, vitals at 9, a half smile when her parents visited at 2. I read labels like scripture and kept a notebook, times, doses, side effects, so the night nurse didn't have to guess. There's a quiet bravery in wiping down a bathroom floor at 3 a.m. that no one claps for. If you know, you know. When her numbers finally ticked upward, I told myself the worst was over. I thought we'd earned the easy season. We hadn't. Something else had been growing in the shadows. Money talk isn't romantic, but here's the adult version of love. I sold my pickup to close the deductible, signed away a tool trailer I'd saved for, and took the overnight drywall job no one wanted. If you're over 30, you understand the math: interest, penalties, credit scores that decide whether your name makes it past the bank's first gate. The clerk at the lot glanced at my odometer and said, "You kept it clean." I nodded and tried not to think about the miles we'd put on it running to late appointments. I told Vanessa we'd replace it when things settled. She cried and said she hated being a bill. I said she wasn't, that the bill was the storm and we were the roof. That line worked for both of us, until it didn't. I upgraded my shop's organization, took on a craftsman restore across town, and told myself sacrifice has a finish date. The balance due dropped. Her hair started to come back. I let myself breathe again. Too soon. It was a Tuesday, and the general contractor bumped our site meeting to Thursday. I texted Vanessa, "Heading home. Grab food?" No reply. I kept driving. There's a place on Maple that does orange chicken right and cream cheese wontons you have to fight for. I ordered both because you buy the thing that got a smile the first time. The bag was warm on the passenger seat. The car smelled like citrus and frying oil. That scent felt like reward, like we could have an ordinary night. If you're in your 40s, you know the blessing of ordinary. I remember the front walkway, 2 cracks I meant to patch, a porch light I'd replaced last month. The door sticks if you don't lift and pull. I always lift and pull. When the latch clicked, the house exhaled. It sounded like relief. I balanced the takeout and my keys, already pulling a joke about stealing her wontons. I thought I was walking into a quiet kitchen. I was walking into the loudest silence of my life. You can tell a house by its sounds. Ours has a stair tread that complains and a fridge that hums like a polite neighbor. Over all that, I heard Vanessa's laugh. Thin, bright, the kind I hadn't heard since remission. It froze me mid-step, the way good news sometimes does. Then another laugh braided through it, lower, familiar from late-night poker and tailgate barbecues. Brandon. Recognition isn't gentle. It arrives like a dropped wrench. I stood there with a paper bag going soft against my fingers and felt my chest run 2 stories of wiring at once. Joy, confusion, warning. I thought maybe he'd stopped by to check on her. Friends do that. Friends also text. He hadn't. The hallway light threw a thin line across the floor. I kept my boots quiet like I do in old houses. Step where the joists are, avoid the squeak boards. People my age joke about bad knees. That night my knees turned young, soft and silent. I moved toward the sound because pretending not to hear would have shamed me more. If you've ever carried a water heater up old stairs, you know how wood talks back. Those steps have told me stories for years. Center tread groans, right edge safer. I placed each foot like I was laying tile, deliberate, straight, no air bubbles. On the wall were our frames. Wedding day, her second bell ringing at the oncology wing, a selfie from a beach we promised to visit again. Folks over 30 collect these milestones like receipts, proof that time did more than pass. Halfway up, I stopped. The bag's weight changed, grease leaking through to my knuckle. Funny what details your brain keeps when your heart is about to learn something it can't unlearn. I heard a soft thud, cabinet door, and the hushed murmur that tries not to be a whisper. That's when denial showed up, dressed as courtesy. Don't intrude. Knock first. Be the bigger man. I took one breath, then another. I decided I'd be the truest man instead. My hand found the door jamb. My body kept going. The kitchen door was half open, a knife of light cutting the hallway. Through that slim gap, the room framed itself like a photograph you didn't ask to see. Stainless steel fridge, a magnet we bought in Santa Fe. And them, Vanessa pinned between Brandon and the refrigerator, her fingers twisted in his shirt like she was holding on during a storm. To their left, a chair with my jacket. To their right, the chemo calendar I'd kept with a Sharpie line for every session. My mind did the mercy math. Maybe it's a hug. Maybe he's comforting her. Then Brandon's hand moved the way a husband's hand moves, and the mercy burned away. If you're listening in your 50s, you know that soundless second where a life retiles itself. Something in me didn't break. It set. Like a door that finally finds its hinge. I didn't kick the door. I didn't shout. I stepped into the frame and let the truth see me seeing it. I wish I could tell you I saw nothing but red. I didn't. I saw the magnet holding our chemo calendar, the one with her initials in the little squares, the side effects I'd noted, the smiley face I drew after her last infusion, sitting inches above Brandon's shoulder. Symbols matter when you're over 30. You keep ticket stubs, kids' drawings, hospital bracelets in kitchen drawers. That calendar was a covenant. Now it was a witness. Vanessa's eyes found mine, not startled, annoyed. Brandon cleared his throat and pretended to own words that weren't there. "Ethan," he started. Behind him a post-it with my handwriting said, "Pick up anti-nausea refill." The smallest details can carry the heaviest weight. I felt my mouth shape a sentence before my mind did. So, this is what remission tastes like. The room shrank to breath and hums. Somewhere a timer beeped. In another life, I would have checked the oven. In this one, I finally checked my soul. I set the takeout bag on the counter with the same care I used to set a level on fresh trim. It wasn't dinner anymore. It was evidence. That's the kind of sentence a grown man understands. Some things feed you, some things prove you. Neither of them jumped. That calm stung worse than the scene itself. It said this wasn't new. Brandon glanced at the back door like the rookie he is. Cheaters always forget exits squeak. Vanessa rolled her shoulders as if she was shrugging off a chore. I noticed I was breathing evenly, the way I do before a tricky cut. In, hold, out. "It's not what you think," Brandon said, proving it was exactly what I thought. "Look at me," I said to Vanessa. Not loud, not soft. Say it started after remission. She stared at my thermos. The silence climbed the walls like ivy. If you've been married a while, you know when an answer is coming. You also know when it already has. The first words out of Vanessa's mouth weren't apology, justification. You turned me into a patient, she said, like the chemo had been my hobby. People in our bracket, mortgages, aging parents, college funds, know the knife of unfair words delivered in a calm tone. I counted 6 breaths, like a man avoiding the wrong cut. While I was filing insurance appeals, who held your hair? I asked. Brandon puffed up like a rooster in a hardware aisle. Back off, man. She deserves happiness. I thought of happiness as quiet mornings, a roof that doesn't leak, a body that chooses to stay. That wasn't the room we were in. Say it started after, I repeated. Vanessa's jaw set. Then the truth came, tinny but lethal. Before. There it was, the nail that finds the stud. The sound it makes isn't loud, but it's final. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. The last illusion fell by itself. That sacrifice guarantees loyalty. It doesn't. It only proves who you are when loyalty doesn't show. If you've lived enough life, you know there's a line between reaction and decision. Reaction shouts. Decision signs. I felt the decision arrive like a bolt finally seated. Then I choose me, I said. Vanessa smirked. And there was the next lesson for men my age. Some people weaponize your goodness. Go ahead, she said. Tell folks you left a cancer survivor. See who hires you. I heard the threat but recognized the tactic. I've seen it in bids that change after the handshake and in favor jobs that balloon. I lifted the takeout lid, let the steam rise, and closed it again. I'll be fair, I said. I'll be honest, but I won't be used. Brandon tried on bravado and found it didn't fit. I slid my phone into my pocket, not to call anyone, just to feel something that was mine. Then I walked out, not dramatic, just done. The climax was quiet, the door catching and then releasing, the latch clicking closed like a chapter with my name still on it. I didn't raise my voice, I raised the standard. Look me in the eye and say when it started. If you're over 30, you know the difference between guessing and hearing it straight. Vanessa's gaze slid past me to the window like the truth might be hiding in the glass. Don't make this a trial, she said. Just accept it. I shook my head. Acceptance is for weather, not betrayal. After remission, I repeated. Or before. A beat. Another. She shifted her weight the way people do right before they admit what they've already decided. Before, she said, barely above a whisper, as if volume could change the meaning. That single word did what shouting never could. It locked the scene in place. Brandon muttered something about complicated, and I felt a calm move through me. Complicated is a leaky roof. Truth is the rain. One you can fix, one you stand in. I didn't throw a plate. I didn't slam a door. I just stopped pretending we had one life. Confession didn't soften anything. It sharpened it. Vanessa started listing grievances I'd heard in gentler tones. The pills, the schedules, the way I hovered. I kept my hands on the back of a chair to keep them from shaking. Hovering kept you alive, I said. It also cost me sleep, money, and years I won't get back. I gave them because I meant my vows. She flinched at the word vows, like it was old furniture we should have donated. You made me feel like a job, she said. If you've ever paid off a second mortgage or taken your mother to physical therapy, you know love often looks like work. Then why choose Brandon before you were well? I asked. She didn't answer. Silence has edges when you're grown. It cuts clean. The kitchen light hummed. The calendar kept staring. I realized we weren't debating feelings. We were cataloging facts. Her before sat there like a date on a receipt. I could frame around it, or I could rip the wall. There's a moment in every remodel where you stop patching and start replacing. Then I choose me, I said, clearer the second time. Brandon laughed too loudly, the way a man does when he knows the floor beneath him is soft. Vanessa crossed her arms like a teenager. You'll regret this, she said. People will talk. People always talk. about divorces, layoffs, teenagers who test fences. What matters is what follows. I won't regret being honest, I answered. I regret not seeing sooner. If you've lived long enough, you collect two piles, what you can live with and what you can't. Cheating during chemo landed in the second pile and bricked it shut. I picked up the bag of food, not to eat but to take something that was mine. We'll sort the rest with attorneys, I said, stepping back from the threshold I'd maintained for years. Vanessa smirked. Brandon watched me like a man watching a fuse. The climax was small, but it was a hinge. I turned, and the room lost its claim on me. Threats rarely shout. They purr. Tell your clients you left a cancer survivor, Vanessa said. Let's see who still hires you. I've heard versions of that in business. Miss this deadline and we'll find another contractor. You learn to separate what's real from what's leverage. I didn't leave you during cancer, I said. You left us during cancer. She rolled her eyes. Brandon finally found a sentence. She deserves happiness. We all do, I said, but not at someone else's expense. I thought of my clients, men who fix HVAC after hours, women who run payroll at the kitchen table. They don't cancel on honesty. They cancel on chaos. Vanessa stepped closer, low voice, mean smile. I'll make sure everyone knows your true character. The words were designed to push me into a scene that would help her. I didn't give it. Write it down, I said. We'll show the judge together. If you've ever signed for a package that wasn't yours, you know the rule. Refuse delivery. I refused. The house sounded different after midnight. No pill alarms, no soft calls from the bathroom, just the kitchen clock and the hum of the fridge, ordinary noises I hadn't heard in a year. Solitude is underrated until it's earned. I sat at the table where I'd logged her meds and let my hands lie flat. If you've ever slept in a hospital chair, you know how a quiet room feels like a gift. I tried a memory test. Name every nurse on the third floor, the security guard who liked jazz, the custodian who saved the good coffee filters. It grounded me. Then the other memories tried to crowd in. The fridge, the calendar, her word before. I didn't shove them away. I set them where they belonged, on a shelf labeled facts. I breathed like a carpenter making a long cut, steady, through the whole board. At 2:10 a.m. I stood, washed the thermos, and turned off the light. The climax was simple. I went to bed without setting a single alarm. Morning came in through blinds I'd installed last spring. I made coffee the way I like it. Black, no vanilla syrup. Hospital coffee taught me to appreciate even the bitter. I sat on the back steps with the mug and thought about those mornings when we'd race the lab opening time, drive through cups sweating on the dash. Folks in their 40s keep mental maps of pharmacies and parking garages. I remembered the oncologist's hallway artwork, watercolors pretending the place wasn't built for hard news. I remembered how Vanessa used to trace the rim of her cup when she was scared. The memory rose up like a reflex and then receded, like waves you respect but don't wade into. If you've lived long enough, you learn to narrate your pain so it doesn't narrate you. Today, I told myself, we switch from caregiving to bookkeeping. I rinsed the mug, grabbed a legal pad, and wrote 3 lines. Call attorney, inventory assets, gather proof. The climax was the pen dot after proof. Period. New list. I'd saved her card months earlier, the way you keep a spare tire. Rachel Collins, family law. Clear font, no slogan. When her assistant answered, I said the words I'd been avoiding. I need a consultation. Divorce. Saying it didn't end anything. It started the part where adults take turns talking. Rachel's office didn't look like television. No black glass, no chrome. Warm wood, framed degrees, a plant that was alive. She shook my hand like a contractor shakes a homeowner's. Direct, not crushing. Tell me what happened, she said, and then didn't interrupt for 6 minutes. That felt like mercy. I laid it out. The calendar, the before, the thread about my work. She didn't glare. She didn't wince. She took notes like a careful framer checks level. Okay, she said finally. We'll proceed on facts, not outrage. That's how judges listen. If you've ever sat with a CPA at tax time, you know the comfort of a person who knows the forms. I exhaled for the first time all day. Rachel's calm wasn't cold. It was measured. She asked for photos, texts, anything with dates and names. "We're telling a story," she said, "but our story has exhibits." I opened a folder in my phone, screenshots I'd taken when Vanessa forgot to lock it. Rachel didn't ask how I felt. She asked, "What's the timestamp? Who paid for dinner? Do you have the receipt?" Older adults understand that feelings are real, but paperwork is persuasive. She slid me a checklist: bank statements, credit cards, joint accounts, health bills, insurance appeals. "You did all the caregiving," she said. "Now do the accounting." Her assistant brought water. I hadn't realized I was thirsty. "They'll try to paint you as abandoning a sick spouse," Rachel warned. "We'll show cohabitation with Brandon, dates during treatment, and we'll protect premarital assets." Protect. Such a simple word, like a lock that finally catches. "One more thing," she added. "Stay calm. Don't take the bait." I nodded. Calm isn't passive. Calm is weight-bearing. Back home, I cleared the kitchen table and laid out what I had. Text threads full of hearts and "be there in 20", photos cropped tight but obvious, calendar shots with my Sharpie marks. If you've ever sorted a garage, you know the rule. Make piles. Keep, toss, donate. My piles were facts, maybes, and noise. Facts had dates. Maybes had shadows. Noise had my anger. I printed what needed printing and labeled each page like I do boxes for a move. It kept my hands from shaking. A buddy once told me, "When in doubt, label." The more I organized, the less the room spun. I noticed patterns, meetups when I was on late installs, girls' nights that aligned with Brandon's poker group. This is the kind of work older adults excel at: patient, thorough, unafraid of boring tasks. I snapped a final photo of the calendar above the fridge. That magnet in the corner suddenly looked like a thumbtack in a map. The climax was a small click in my head. I could prove a timeline. Rachel called as I was capping a Sharpie. "Good start," she said. "Now we need the money trail." Money is the language courts respect. She walked me through it. Statements for 12 months, any new lines of credit, big withdrawals, hotel names that match girls' nights. I opened the file drawer where we keep warranties and tax returns. Marriage in a metal box. If you've ever pulled a report for a mortgage refinance, you know the smell of old paper and the satisfaction of finding exactly what you need. I stacked statements in order, then logged into our online accounts. She told me to look for patterns: recurring charges near Brandon's condo, late-night ride shares from the same block, retail splurges that arrived with silence. "Don't assume motive," she said. "We only need behavior." I wrote that down. Motive is for memoirs. Behavior is for judges. I poured another cup of coffee and kept going. The climax came with a simple realization. Their romance wasn't just emotional. It had receipts. It's funny, the places where life turns. Kitchen tables, church basements, folding chairs at school gyms. Mine turned under a lamp I'd wired myself. I lined up charges next to the calendar, a poor man's crime board. March 12th, girls' night. March 12th, steakhouse 2 blocks from Brandon's. April 3rd, resting. April 3, parking garage at his building. If you've managed a family budget, you know the feeling when numbers tell you what words won't. I traced one column with my finger and hit a new name. Store card I didn't recognize. Opened recently, minimal balance, growing fast. Retail where we never shop. I circled it. The truth wasn't hiding. It was itemized. I took photos of the layout for Rachel, labeling each image. The longer I worked, the quieter I felt. Not numb, focused. The climax wasn't rage. It was acceptance with edges, the kind where you stop arguing with a crooked board and cut a new one. I found it tucked in a stack of coupons, an envelope with a glossy logo and Vanessa's name. New card. Opened 6 months ago. The statement showed dinners at Brandon's favorite places, ride shares from his block, and a hotel I'd driven past on my way to the lumber yard. Older adults know this moment, when the thing you suspected turns into the thing you can prove. I didn't pace. I didn't drink. I took pictures, downloaded PDFs, and backed them up to a drive with a plain label. Then I placed the card on the table under the chemo calendar and snapped one last photo for the record. It felt like placing two X-rays side by side, two kinds of sickness, one obvious, one chosen. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Dinner tomorrow? We should talk." I stared at the words until they blurred. "We will," I typed, "with counsel." The climax was a quiet yes to my own future. I closed the folder and felt the house settle, level at last. Mrs. Darla Pierce lives 3 doors down and notices everything without making a hobby of gossip. When I knocked, she opened before the second rap, like she'd been expecting the knock all month. "I wasn't sure if I should get involved," she said, ushering me past a crocheted throw and a row of family photos. But I kept thinking, if it were my late Harold, I'd want the truth. She pointed to the doorbell monitor. Clear as a weather report, timestamps, motion clips, angles I knew by heart from walking our dogs. Brandon's truck easing in after dark. Vanessa slipping out in a hoodie, head down, moving quick like rain between drops. Darla had saved the files to a thumb drive labeled Thursday Bible, Don't Delete, which made me want to laugh and cry at once. "You didn't get this from me," she said, squeezing my wrist with a grandmother's grip. The climax was a soft click as the drive seated in my laptop. Gossip turned evidence. I queued the clips at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd logged chemo meds and balanced bills. The first video caught Vanessa glancing back at our windows, then jogging to Brandon's truck like a teenager dodging curfew. The camera didn't judge, it just recorded. In another clip, she returns before dawn, smoothing her hair in the reflection of the glass. If you're over 30, you understand how a camera can say what a person won't. The part that got me wasn't the kiss. It was the timing. Date stamps landed inside the chemo weeks. I paused the frame and felt my jaw set the way it does when lumber splits wrong. I dragged a folder named House into a new one labeled Case. Then I copied every file twice, Cloud and Drive, because older men trust backups more than promises. The climax was practical. I emailed Rachel the folder link with a subject line even a judge would understand. Doorbell footage, dates during treatment. The ping came while the files uploaded. "Vanessa, dinner tomorrow? We should talk." If you've separated once or twice in your circle, you've seen that line before. It means regroup, reset, renegotiate the story. I read it twice and felt 2 tracks form, one where I met her alone, the other where I brought daylight. I typed, "Jerry's Diner, 6 p.m., public place, neutral ground. Enough coffee cups to keep voices down." She replied, "Fine." One word, sharp as a tack. I added the meat to my calendar and texted Darla, "Thank you again." She sent back a heart and a casserole emoji, which is how older neighborhoods say, "You're not alone." I printed a 1-page summary of the footage and tucked it into a manila folder with my name on the tab. It's amazing how a tab changes your back. You stand straighter. The climax was the moment I slid the folder into my truck. I wasn't going to talk feelings, I was going to state facts. Jerry's Diner has cracked red booths, a bell that rings when the door opens, and a waitress who calls everybody hon without being cute about it. I've met clients there for 20 years because coffee refills buy patience. I chose the corner booth with the wall behind me, a habit from job sites where it pays to see the room. The laminated menu hasn't changed since gas was $2.19. I ordered black coffee and kept the chair across from me empty. If you're in your 40s or 50s, you know how public places hold private wars. Church foyers, school gyms, hospital elevators. Vanessa arrived 2 minutes late with Brandon 1 step behind like a shadow trying to be a shield. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I pushed the extra chair out with my boot. The bell rang again. The waitress poured. The climax was quiet and felt like a level settling on fresh trim. This would not be a scene. This would be a record. Older adults know the power of opening lines on job bids, at funerals, and court. Vanessa went first. "You're painting me as a villain," she said, stirring cream into a cup she wouldn't drink. Brandon shifted like the booth had splinters. I kept my hands flat on the table to keep from pointing. "I'm painting facts," I said. "We can name feelings after." She rolled her eyes. "You turned me into a patient." There it was, the thesis. I slid the folder halfway across the table but didn't open it yet. "You became a patient when cancer arrived," I said. "I stayed your husband anyhow." Brandon cleared his throat. "She needs breathing room." I gave it, I said. At 3 a.m., in ER hallways, between drywall installs. What you took was time I didn't offer. The waitress refilled our cups like she was watering a stubborn plant. The climax was a single sentence I'd rehearsed in the truck. Say it started after remission, and I'll walk away different. Vanessa leaned back like a lawyer preparing a closing. Everything became about pills, charts, alarms, about you being a hero, she said. Folks who've midwifed a parent through hospice or sat beside a spouse after surgery know the sting here. The practical gets mistaken for control. I didn't defend my character. I defended the calendar. During infusions, you squeezed my hand and said I was saving your life, I said. I believed you. I sold my truck because I believed you. Brandon tried a softer tone. It just happened. Things don't just happen during chemo weeks. They require planning, hotel keys, gas money, lies that fit between lab results. I opened the folder and slid out one photo. Vanessa stepping into Brandon's truck. Date, time, temperature in the corner. She stared at it like it might blink. The climax was her looking away first. That small turn of the head is how adults tell the truth without words. I asked it because it needed asking, not because I wanted to hear the answer. Brandon, how many times did you hold her hair when the chemo hit? He stared at his coffee like the answer might be printed on the surface. How many insurance appeals did you file? Silence. Not the comfortable kind married people know, the courtroom kind. Vanessa set her spoon down with a click that turned heads 2 booths over. You're cruel, she said. Cruel as ignoring the bill that kept the lights on. Cruel as kissing next to a calendar that counted surviving. No, I said. I'm clear. I turned to Brandon. Did you pay for any of this? His jaw worked. The waitress slid a check between us like a referee tossing a flag. The climax was in the only numbers that mattered. Dates on photos, times on receipts, dollars that moved from my account while I was buying saw blades and anti-nausea meds. When cornered, people reach for leverage. Vanessa went for the oldest one, money. I want half of your business, she said, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle in her blouse. Folks our age know how hard it is to build anything from zero. Companies, reputations, a credit line that doesn't laugh you out of the bank. You weren't on the incorporation, I said. You're not on insurance, contracts, or payroll. I slid copies of the articles across the table, incorporation dates circled in thick pen, 4 years before our wedding. Brandon snorted, but it sounded more like a cough. I supported you, Vanessa said. Support is driving to client walkthroughs, painting a rental on weekends, making chili on bid nights. It is not a co-signature magically appearing after the fact. You'll get fair, I said, but you don't get what you didn't build. The climax was watching her read the dates twice, realize what they meant, and understand for the first time that paperwork isn't personal, it's permanent. I could feel the diner's air shift, the way a room changes when everyone knows the play is almost over. Vanessa's jaw set. Brandon's knee bounced under the table. You're heartless, she said. Men in their 40s and 50s get called that when they stop negotiating with chaos. No, I said. I'm finished performing. I gathered the copies, slid them back into the folder, and capped my pen. From here on, talk to my attorney. Brandon tried one last swing. Real men fight for their marriages. Real men don't fight their wives' boyfriends, I said. They fight for their sanity. The waitress returned with to-go cups I hadn't asked for. She must have decided we were done. She was right. I stood, left cash for the coffee, and nodded a thank you that meant more than it looked. The climax was leaving 2 people at a booth built for 3, and feeling, for the first time in months, that walking away wasn't weakness. It was weightlifting. Vanessa followed me into the parking lot with Brandon half a step behind, both of them talking over each other like a radio between stations. You'll hear from my lawyer, she said, voice rising for the first time. Good, I answered, unlocking my truck. So will you. Brandon reached out and touched my shoulder, a mistake he won't repeat. I didn't square up. I just turned so his hand met air, the way a carpenter avoids a nail he knows will split the grain. Don't come to the house without notice, I said. Text only. Emergencies go through family, not through him. If you've raised teenagers, you know that tone, the one that ends debate. She opened her mouth to throw one more match and then thought better of it. The bell over the diner door rang for someone else's normal life. The climax was my door closing with a solid truck door thud, the kind that says this vehicle still belongs to the man who paid for it. Back home, I sent Rachel a summary. Bullet points, timestamps, a photo of the to-go cups that still smelled like burnt coffee and nerves. Older adults know the value of a clean email, short paragraphs, numbered attachments, subject line that earns a fast open. She called within 5 minutes. "Good job staying calm," she said. "Send the incorporation docs and the doorbell clips to the secure folder." I did. "One more thing," she added. "No more face-to-face without me." I agreed. My hands found a rag and started wiping the already clean countertop. Busy hands keep feelings from fogging the gauges. "Vanessa will push for half," Rachel said. "We'll counter with dates, cohabitation, and premarital ownership." I pictured our dining table with manila folders instead of place settings, and felt oddly reassured. The climax was practical and adult. I put the folder in a fireproof box, locked it, and wrote, "Case, do not move," on top with a thick black marker. Rachel's last instruction echoed as I shut the box. "Don't engage, collect." It runs counter to the movie version where a man delivers a speech and the violins swell. In real life, older men win by paperwork and patience. I texted Vanessa one line: "Communicate through counsel." Then I set up a shared drive with labeled folders, assets, medical, messages, footage, and scanned in everything that still lived on paper. I called my buddy with the notary stamp and scheduled signatures for the next day. The house felt different, not empty, just under new management. Mine. Before bed, I walked the rooms, touching the things I'd built: trim corners, a shelf that sits dead level, the rocking chair waiting for glue up. I whispered a sentence I wanted my future to overhear: receipts, not rage. The climax was small and private. I powered down my phone, laid it face down on the nightstand, and listened to a silence that finally belonged to me. When I got home, the closet sounded like a storm. Hangers scraping, drawers slamming, the kind of noise people make when they want the walls to witness. Vanessa had 3 garbage bags open on the bed and a suitcase yawning like a mouth. "Don't touch anything," she said, as if I'd come to negotiate the color of the sky. I stood in the doorway and saw what only older eyes see. Not just clothes, but a plan, documents in a folder, jewelry case open, a stack of mail she must have fished from the office. She moved fast, angry fast, which is really scared fast with a mask on. "You think you're the only one who can leave?" she said. I didn't answer. Silence isn't weakness, it's a tool. I set my keys on the dresser so the sound would mark the moment. Then I breathed through my nose the way I do before a tough cut. The climax was small. I turned my phone camera on, quiet, legal, steady. I opened the voice memo app and slipped my phone into my shirt pocket, lens up. If you've ever learned the hard way at a job site, you know the rule: document before demo. Vanessa stalked between the dresser and the closet, narrating a story for an audience I wasn't auditioning for. "I gave up my life for you," she said, tossing heels into a bag like evidence into a fire. I kept my hands in view and my mouth shut. The room recorded itself: the slap of leather, the tin rattle of hangers, the zip of a suitcase. She grabbed a framed photo from the nightstand, stared at it, then set it face down with a snap that felt like a verdict. "This is what you wanted," she said. The line was meant to bait me into a scene. I let it fall. The climax was the red light on my screen, proof breathing, time-stamped, patient as a clerk who never forgets. Vanessa opened the jewelry box and fished for the sound she wanted me to hear. She held up our wedding band between 2 fingers like a coin she was done spending. "This," she said, "is heavy." She meant me. She meant vows. She meant history. Then she slid it off and flicked it onto the bed so it bounced once and landed in the dip where we used to sleep. The metal made a small, honest sound, more truth than either of us had said all week. I didn't lunge. I didn't negotiate value like a pawnshop man. I let the ring sit there, bright against a comforter we'd argued about buying. Older adults will understand. Some symbols stop being a promise and become a record. I watched her wait for me to pick it up. I didn't. The climax was restraint, the sight of something sacred losing its job and me refusing to hire it back. She wanted a fight for the highlight reel. I gave her stillness for the courtroom. "Say something," she demanded, tossing blouses as if volume could change dates on a statement. I glanced at the mirror and saw a man I recognized, jaw set, eyes clear, shoulders level. I took one step back, framing the whole room in the camera's view, the suitcase, the ring, the half-open closet, her hand in the jewelry box. "I'll speak through counsel," I said, the way you say no when a change order tries to sneak into a final bill. She laughed, sharp and hollow. "Coward. If you've coached teenagers, you know that word is a fishing lure. Don't bite." I checked the time, texted Rachel. "Recording? Packing? Ring off? No contact." Then I placed my phone on the dresser so the mic could catch the zipper, the drawers, the breath between insults. The climax was literal. I pressed stop, saved the file, and named it what it was: bedroom 9:42 p.m. By morning, the house had that post-storm quiet, things not where they belong, air thick with what didn't need to be said. I emailed Rachel the audio and a short summary: who, what, where, when. She replied with a single sentence that felt like a brace under a sagging beam: "Filing for temporary protection of house and business today." I made coffee, black, and stood at the sink while the sunrise stripped the backyard to honest colors. If you're over 40, you know the relief of someone else handling the form while you handle the day. I walked room to room and photographed everything I owned before the wedding: tools, receipts, model numbers, serial plates. Inventory is the opposite of rage. It's quiet authority. The doorbell rang. A courier handed me a stamped packet like a baton in a relay. The climax was the title page, case number, ink, and a seal that said, "The law had my name spelled right." In the afternoon, I drove to Margaret and Thomas Cole's. Modest house, tidy porch, a wind chime that sounded like good intentions. They've been married long enough to know vows aren't poetry. They're calendars and casseroles. Margaret's hands trembled pouring coffee. Thomas nodded me to the table where Thanksgiving used to sit. "Tell us," he said. And I did. Dates, receipts, footage. No adjectives. I laid the credit card statements and doorbell stills side by side, the way a mechanic lays parts he's about to replace. Margaret read the dates once, then again, lips moving. Thomas didn't reach for a defense or a blame. He studied the paper like a man reading a diagnosis. "During treatment?" he asked. I nodded. There's a sound a room makes when truth arrives, a hum lowering, a chair settling. The climax was simple and brutal. Margaret's palm on a photo of her daughter laughing in another man's truck, the chemo calendar reflected in the windshield. I slid a yellow pad across to Thomas with a list. Timelines, addresses, payments I'd made, items already secured by the court order. Older adults respect a clean list the way carpenters respect a square, because it keeps everything honest. "I'm not here to humiliate her," I said. "I'm here to explain why I can't be the Ned anymore." Margaret shook her head, tears tracking, the way grief and shame sometimes mix into one color. She was scared, she said, as if fear could alter math. "So was I answered. I stayed." I pointed to a hotel receipt 3 days after infusion and a ride share from Brandon's block 4 nights later. Thomas slid his reading glasses down and stared a long beat. "We raised her better," he said quietly, not to me, not even to Margaret, just into the space where fathers talk to themselves. The climax was a nod from him that wasn't approval or agreement, just acknowledgement that a line had been crossed with both feet. We went through the timeline like adults paying bills, line by line, no shortcuts. Margaret tried to find a square that didn't align, the dates refused to move. Thomas asked for copies. I'd brought 2 sets. If you've managed estates or helped a parent downsize, you know paperwork can feel like mercy because it gives your hands a job while your heart catches up. "What do you need from us?" Thomas asked. "Only this," I said. "No more pressure to be the bigger man. No messages through family. If she needs care, coordinate with her clinic or her insurer." Margaret flinched at the word insurer, and I understood. Insurance is where romance goes to learn math. "We'll handle her logistics," Thomas said, voice firmer now. The wind chime outside gave a small answer. The climax was me leaving the folder with them. Truth they could hold, not an argument they had to survive. I stepped off their porch lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the load wasn't mine alone anymore. Heavier because parents carry a different grief. The drive home ran through familiar streets, ball fields, the hardware store where the owner still writes prices in Sharpie, a church with a cracked sign. I remembered the first time I'd come to this neighborhood to pick up Vanessa for a date, the perfume she wore that made grocery aisles feel like a movie. Memory is a loyal dog. It follows even when you don't call it. I parked, turned off the engine, and let the quiet answer the day. If you've ever ended a long project, you know that hollow thud. Tools back in the box, site swept, keys returned. It isn't sadness. It's the body agreeing with the truth. The climax was me walking into my house and noticing what was missing, and liking the sound it made. That night, the house finally told me who owned it. No pill alarms, no whispered pleas from behind a bathroom door, just the ceiling fan's soft shuffle and the kind of silence older men keep like a savings account. I made a small dinner and ate it at the counter, standing, the way I do at job sites when there's more to do than time to do it. I rinsed the plate and left it to dry without guilt. Then I walked the rooms and touched what I'd built. Trim neat at the corners, a door that closes with a kiss instead of a slap, a rocking chair waiting for its last coat of oil. I didn't pray long. I didn't make speeches. I said 3 words I could keep. Protect, provide, proceed. The climax was a simple act I hadn't done in months. I slept through the night without checking a clock that wasn't ringing. Morning came in clean. I ground beans by hand like my grandfather taught me and let the kettle sing. Black coffee in a chipped mug tastes like resolve if you've earned it. I took it to the back steps and watched light shake loose from the trees. The phone stayed face down on the counter. If someone needed me, they'd leave a message. I made a list not of chores but of choices. Finish the craftsman trim, call the notary, send Rachel the updated inventory, change the garage keypad. Older adults know this tenderness of small competence. Hinges oiled, bills paid on time, names spelled right on envelopes. My chest didn't feel empty. It felt useful. I thought about men I know, divorced, widowed, stubborn, who learned to like their own company again. The climax was ordinary and perfect. I opened the shop door, flipped on the light, and the smell of cut pine told me I still belonged to something honest. Before I left for the job site, I set the ring in a small parts tray with washers and screws, objects that know what they're for. I texted Rachel. Filed received. Meeting when ready. She replied with a thumbs up and a time. I packed the truck like muscle memory. Level, squares, blades, the manila folder in a hard case. Older adults understand this rhythm. Work isn't just income, it's orientation. On the way out, I paused at the fridge. The chemo calendar still hung there, but now it meant exactly what it meant. A record of what I did right, not a leash for what I should keep doing. I pulled it down, slid it into a box labeled Medical Archive, and taped it shut. Not erasing, filing. The climax was locking the front door and hearing the deadbolt seat with that confident click. No guitars, no speeches, just hardware doing its job, like me, finally. I spent Saturday doing the most adult thing I know, inventory. If you've refinanced a house or settled an estate, you understand the discipline, serial numbers, purchase dates, photos with today's newspaper in the frame. I opened the shop and lined tools by era. The table saw I bought 4 years pre-wedding, Grandpa's planes, the lathe I restored myself. In the office, I pulled tax returns, incorporation papers, old insurance binders. I took pictures of every page and ran PDFs to a folder marked premarital, evidence. I even filmed a slow walkthrough narrating the dates, because judges listen better when they can see. This wasn't anger, it was architecture. By afternoon, the drive was backed up in 3 places: cloud, hard case, safe deposit. That's how older men sleep. I printed a 1-page index for Rachel with a neat table of contents. The climax came with a label maker click. Business, founded before marriage. A strip of plastic truth that doesn't bend to tears. Rachel called early Monday. House is under temporary protection, business too. Her voice has that contractor quality I trust. No drama, just specs. Premarital assets are insulated unless you commingled them, she said. You didn't. I pictured blueprints, Walls, loads, spans. You can work without looking over your shoulder. After we hung up, I walked the perimeter like a foreman. New keypad code, fresh file passwords, a binder labeled court orders on the entry table for any surprise visitor. If you've coached a little league team or run a small crew, you know the piece of rules posted where everyone can see them. I texted Vanessa's attorney the contact protocol and set do not disturb for off hours. Then I stood in the shop's doorway and let relief do the heavy lifting my shoulders usually do. The climax didn't shout. It clicked, the same sound a deadbolt makes when it seats right. My name, my house, my company, protected. Not by hope, by paper. That night, I went back to the rocking chair I'd left half glued. Wood forgives if you work with the grain. I clamped the back spindles, eased hide glue into the mortises, and wiped the squeeze out with a rag that had seen 20 summers. If you're over 30, you know how fixing a thing can fix a man. My hands remembered the rhythm. Scrape, sand, test fit, breathe. I thought about the men I'd watched get their steady back this way, after layoffs, after funerals, after hitting reset in a quiet apartment. The chair had good bones. It just needed time and pressure in the right places. I pressed my palm to the crest rail until the set felt true. The shop smelled like pine and patience. My phone lay face down on the bench, buzzing once, then quiet. The climax was not philosophical. It was tactile, a rasp whispering along clean grain, a joint seating like it had always meant to. Things can be remade. People too. Just after 2, the phone cut through the dark like a smoke alarm. Vanessa. I knew before I looked. If you've spent years as the first call, your body answers before your mind does. It's back, she said. The words hit old muscles trained to rise. Keys, wallet, shoes. I stood at the bench instead. The shop smelled like fresh glue and coffee gone cold. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Sorrow is not the same as surrender. She paused for the sympathy she remembered. Can you? I set the phone down, not harsh, not gentle, and watched the screen dim. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks you finally use. I made a note for Rachel. Contact log, 2:07 a.m. Then I swept the floor because motion steadies me. The climax was small and private. I did not pick up again. I listened to the night settle and let the chair cure while the part of me that used to rescue learned, at last, to rest. At 8 sharp, the doorbell rang. Margaret stood on the porch holding her purse like a life preserver. Thomas waited in the car, hands on the wheel. Ethan, please, she said, eyes raw. It's worse. She needs you. Parents our age speak a language of errands and emergencies. I answered in that language. I'm sorry this is happening, I said. I won't be the caregiver again. She flinched. How can you live with yourself? That's the kind of question guilt asks when it's out of other tools. I gestured to the folder on the console table, court orders, timelines, then to the box labeled medical, archive. I lived with myself when it was hardest, I said. I'm going to live with myself now. Thomas lowered his window, not looking at me, and said, We'll manage. He meant, we'll stop asking. The climax was a sentence I thought I'd never say without shaking. Use the clinic. Use her insurer. Don't use me. Half an hour later, Rachel called. They filed for emergency spousal support, she said. Medical hardship, prior caregiving. I could hear her pen already scratching a counter. We'll respond with cohabitation evidence, timing during treatment, and your premarital business, she paused. Stay off text, no commentary. Understood, I said. This is the part older adults understand. Court is not catharsis, it's calculus. I forwarded the footage index, the incorporation letter, and a clean list of dates with sources attached. Then I shaved, put on a decent shirt, and ate something with protein because your brain needs steadiness more than your heart needs speeches. Rachel sent a draft response with exhibits labeled like a tidy closet. One more thing, she added. Expect a narrative push online. Don't engage. I pictured posts fishing for outrage. The climax was a discipline I wish I'd learned sooner. I deleted my social apps for 30 days and wrote no reacting on a post-it above my desk. The text came from an unknown number. Jessica Brooks. We should talk. I recognized the last name before the story. Brandon's longtime girlfriend. We met at a coffee shop where people take interviews and second chances. She arrived crisp, composed, carrying a manila folder that looked heavy with answers. While he was playing hero with Vanessa, she said, opening the flap, he was also playing devoted with me. 6 years of photos, bank screens, travel receipts keyed to his calendar. Joint account, she added, tapping a line item. He used my money to fund their fantasy. It takes a certain kind of woman to suffer, then organize. Older men recognize that courage because our mothers taught us. You're not here to help me, I said. You're here to finish your own story. She nodded. Maybe both. The climax came when she slid across a printout I hadn't seen. Brandon's workplace policy on personal conduct, highlighted, relationships creating COI subject to termination. Paper meets consequence. Jessica doesn't do drama, she does logistics. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., his office, she said. I'll deliver this to HR and his manager. Family gets copies, too. I pictured the lobby, the folder, the faces turning. Not revenge, reality finally catching up. You sure? I asked. I'm done funding my own humiliation, she said. Older adults know the fuel behind that line. I emailed Rachel. New witness. Documents attached. Rachel replied, we won't coordinate, but evidence is evidence. Save whatever goes public. The next morning, on my way to a job site, I idled at the light across from Brandon's building. Through the glass, I saw Jessica speaking with a woman in a blazer while a security guard watched, interested. Then pages fanned across a desk like a deck being dealt, and a man who looked like a boss leaned in. The climax was the expression I saw when Brandon stepped off the elevator, color draining, mouth tightening, the look of a story losing its narrator. By noon, whispers had turned into emails. A friend texted, he's on leave pending review. Jessica forwarded screenshots. Expense reports now flagged. A company card matched to dinners that coincided with girls' nights. She included photos from restaurant cameras, the kind that catch smiles no one planned to explain. His family knows, she wrote. I mailed them copies. If you've ever settled a dispute over a fence line or a bill of sale, you understand the relief of evidence that doesn't blink. I sent the packet to Rachel and watched her sort it into our exhibit list with the neatness of a librarian. This undermines their hardship story, she said, also supports dissipation of marital assets. Lawyer words, yes, but clear enough. Their choices had price tags. The climax was a single line in Rachel's email. We're ready to settle from strength, or try it. Strength didn't feel like a roar. It felt like a level going plumb on its own. Courtrooms don't care for speeches. They like sequence. Rachel laid out ours like a contractor's walkthrough, structural first. Incorporation 4 years pre-marriage. Photos and timestamps during treatment. Cohabitation indicators with Brandon. Then the money trail. The hidden card, the dinners, the ride shares. Vanessa's attorney tried the human interest route. Rachel answered with dates. Older adults know that's not cold. That's how you protect what you've built. Near the end, Rachel slid our last exhibit to counsel, a 3-page letter Vanessa wrote during her worst chemo week, thanking me for keeping her alive, dated 2 weeks before her first lease signature with Brandon. The room changed temperature. Vanessa stared at her own handwriting and finally looked small for a reason that wasn't illness. The climax was quiet and permanent, the judge's pen scratching across the order, house protected, business separate, short-term support reflecting what she'd already taken, no more. Not revenge, alignment. The courthouse steps have hosted every ending, weddings, adoptions, bankruptcies, divorces. Mine felt like stepping off scaffolding onto solid ground. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. You stayed steady. Go build something that lasts, she said. I promised myself I would. On the drive home, the radio played a song from a summer we were good, and it didn't bruise me. That's when you know you're healing, when memory becomes a photograph instead of a trapdoor. I parked, set the file box on a shelf, and made coffee the way I like it. Black, quiet, honest. A text came in from an unknown number. He moved out. Jessica, I guessed. Another buzz. An appointment reminder from the Craftsman Project. Work. The old friend that doesn't ask for explanations. The climax was a sentence I said out loud to the empty kitchen, testing the fit like a door on new hinges. I'm done rescuing people who drown me. Then I open the shop and let the saw wake up the morning. I sit on the front steps of the Craftsman I just brought back to life, evening light running warm across new trim. The brass plate on my tool chest catches it, Ethan Walker, stamped clean and true. My hands remember every pass of the plane, every careful cut where patience beat force. Houses teach you, square the frame, throw out the rot, trust the level even when your eye argues. I think about hospital halls, a calendar stuck to a fridge, a ring that made a small honest sound when it hit the bed. Those were chapters, not chains. Behind me, a door I rehung closes with a soft, certain kiss. Ahead, the street smells like fresh rain and cut pine. I'm not angry. I'm aligned. Some lessons arrive loud. Mine arrived like a hinge finally seating. You don't owe a second rescue to the person who drowned you the first time. I chose to breathe for myself. If it were you, would you forgive or would you walk? Comment below.